Thank you. I'm going to try to keep it short, but I got a lot to say. But there's some housekeeping stuff that I have to remember to say at the beginning. And I know most of you think I'm 16, but I'm a little older than that, so now I'm starting to forget things like Marion, you know. That was funny. But I want to give a shout out to the People's Tribune and the Tribunal, and I want to encourage people to get those papers because as this country continues to black out struggles that are happening in Benton Harbor, struggles that are happening in West Virginia, struggles that are happening in California and all across this country, those papers are committed to covering the real struggles in our country. So we need to pick up those papers and we need to support them. And then I want to thank Fred and for putting me on after the Rev. Thanks a lot. But I want to thank the Michigan and the Detroit Greens, because you guys have always been on the right train, doing the right things for the rest of the Greens and the rest of the entire country. So let's hear it.
Thank you, Cheri.
And then I also have to say something about Margaret, because I needed my spirit lifted, because it's amazing how, you know, one day I think I'm going in one direction and then I find out 10 minutes later I'm going in another direction. I thought I was on my way to Texas tomorrow, and instead I'm headed back at the end of tonight to drive to the storm.
Yikes.
Because it looks like it's going to be actually worse than they're saying, and I got to go home and make sure all the folks that I know don't spend the next 20 weeks without electric and in water and all of the devastating things that come with these horrible storms that have been created as a result of human beings and corporations destroying our climate. And so we know that these storms are getting bigger and they're lasting longer, and they're coming in all different interesting ways and forms. And the last I heard is that in Philly they're clearing out some of the stuff in some of the schools and stuff, so it's looking like it's going to be pretty serious. And they're talking about grounding transportation for the second time in history. So anyway, I want to say that I am very proud to be here tonight. This is the end of a journey that I've been on, turning the Rust Belt into the Green Belt. And what a better place to end it other than Detroit.
That's right.
This has been a very long journey for me, and a lot of people want to know, you know, how did Cheri Honkala decide to be the first formerly homeless mother, single mother, to decide to run for one of this country's highest offices? And I have to tell you, that when I first heard about it, I received a letter in the mail from Dr. Jill Stein, and she said, you know, Cheri, would you agree to be on a short list to run for vice president? And immediately my ego filled this whole room. I was like, whoa, I get to tell everybody that somebody wants me for vice president. But then immediately I had the same kind of joy, like, thank God, after they vet me and find out I've been arrested over 200 times, they'll never pick me. you know, and I don't have to have the stress of, you know, traveling all over the place and going further financially downwardly mobile and, you know, going without sleep and all of those kinds of things, and not having, you know, my 9,000 skeletons that have never been in the closet on display for the entire world. But needless to say, a couple weeks later, I then got the phone call. And I thought Jill was just calling me to say, hey Cheri, great, thanks for agreeing to be on the short list, but no thanks. But it didn't work out like that. She said instead, you know, Cheri, you know, she didn't use these words, but it was pretty much like, Cheri, we want you, your baggage, and your skeletons. And so the woman who is the doctor, the Harvard graduate, who teaches internal medicine and practices internal medicine, is now hooked up with the woman from the School of Hard Knocks. And it's a great combination. So, you know, this has definitely been a long journey. Many of you in here in this room are responsible for the loudmouth, I ain't gonna take your crap personality that I have. So if anybody in here has issues with the fact that we can never quite tell Cheri to shut up and sit down, we'll hear from you later. The people in this room are responsible for the woman that I am today. And you know, so I've taken some of those lessons that I've learned from, you know, Marion, General Baker, Maureen, you know, I could just go on and on around this room here, and I've decided to pass them on to Dr. Jill Stein. You know, that was my responsibility as the vice presidential running mate. And so one of the very first things I asked her to do was like, hi Jill, can you go to jail with me next week in Philadelphia? And, you know, so the next thing I knew, Jill and I were taking over the headquarters of Fannie Mae, and and so all of the movement folks were like, wow, you know, movement folks meet the, you know, some of the movement folks from the Greens meet each other. And so I've been hooking up folks that I've been a part of across the entire country with sections of the Greens all over the entire country. And we're finding out that we have a common enemy. And so we're trying to figure out how do we begin to actually work together to deal with all of these horrible things that we're facing across the country. But, you know, just as much as I've been learning every single day from Jill on the campaign trail, she's been learning a lot from me too. After all, our first journey was, you know, to the Roundhouse, which is the jail in Philadelphia. And I'm skilled at it because with over 200 arrests, I know exactly what to do, which is to, you know, curl up in a ball and go to sleep and try to get out, you know, sleep your time through when you're in the jail cell. And we were arrested with a labor leader and an African-American youth, and of course, you got to go to jail with a 90-year-old nun. And so I managed to get out of the line and stick the 90-year-old nun with Jill, because I was really tired, and if anybody knows Dr. Jill Stein, she likes to talk. And so I just wanted to, like, you know, go to sleep and get through the hours that we would have to be there in jail. And as soon as I laid down next to the toilet, and I was in there with about 15 other women, next thing I know is I heard John, this young African-American male that went to jail with us, stand up, hold on to the bars, and say, dun, 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 I just want to let everybody in jail here know that we have a couple celebrities. We have Dr. Jill Stein and Cheri Honkala running for president and vice president of the Green Party. I, of course, immediately became horrified and tried to act like I don't know who he's talking about. And Jill immediately goes over to the bar and says, "Hi, everyone. I'm Jill, and I'm on the Green Party ticket." And then he begins to ask her questions for like 24 hours, it seemed like. And she was so gracious to answer every single question about every issue in America. And by the time we got out of jail, Jill had recruited everybody into the Green Party, and Sister Margaret McKenna had prayed for everyone. So there's been quite an exchange of learning and teaching each other in this process. But I just also want to say that as I've been traveling around the country and talking to folks, I had said earlier today when I was talking to some of the folks from Occupy that, it's like a moment that I had one time when I had traveled to Gaza. And I was sitting in the room with a bunch of folks from the human rights organization in Gaza. And as we were sitting in there, this is right before, the absolute stuff hit the fan there, and they couldn't concentrate on the discussion because they were getting up and going outside the door and on phones, and then coming back into the room, and a couple of the men would start crying in front of us and all of that kind of stuff. And I've been in those similar living rooms with those similar feelings across the entire country. And basically what I'm talking about is running for office during a period of time in history right now when people know something is big and something is coming. And I'm not talking about the storm, Sandy, on the East Coast either. And this was further brought to me as, I figured, we had, busted our tails trying to get on the ballot across the entire country. And I figured, in Pennsylvania, it takes 2,000 signatures for a Democrat to get on the ballot, 2,000 signatures for a Republican, and of course it's fair, the Greens have to get 20,000, and then they have to get 40,000 in order to survive the legal challenge. That's fair, right? No. So I'm like, okay, we jumped that hurdle, and then we did it in 37 other states across the country. We jumped the hurdles. And we did it in the heat, a new kind of heat in our country, right? The heat of the summer, when 103 is actually 110, and people are dropping left and right, and they're issuing heat warnings, and you're not supposed to go outside. We were collecting the signatures. So I figured we're on 38 ballots across the entire country. 85% of the population has the ability to vote for Jill and I. We qualified for federal matching funds by raising enough money in each of these states, and then you tell us that the only venue, the debates, we can't be on the stage? But I thought we lived in a democracy. I thought that if it was mathematically possible for candidates to win the White House, that was the only thing that we needed in order to be a part of the debates. Well then, I had to learn, well, this is how the debates work. The Democrats and the Republicans get together and they decide who's going to be a part of the debates. And that is sponsored by 10 corporations. It reminded me something similar to the Hunger Games. Have you all seen the Hunger Games in here? Well, I don't do fiction. I don't have time for fiction. But I decided, a bunch of folks said, Cheri, you have to see the Hunger Games. And not only did I go see the Hunger Games, I brought whole groups of youth from Kensington to go see the Hunger Games. And they loved the show, the movie, and they said, but Cheri, the thing that's scarier is in the Hunger Games, each of the districts fight and they kill each other in order to get food for their districts. And the young people that I brought said, you know what though, Cheri? This is much worse. I mean, our lived reality is much worse than what we see in the movies. And that's what's happening across this entire country. Our young people are engaged in the Hunger Games while our politicians are engaged in this theater. And all of us sitting out here think there's actually a debate that's taking place on television. As we become obsessed with talking about things like Mitt Romney doesn't like Big Bird. Why weren't they talking about mass incarceration? How 1 in every 9 African American males is in prison? Why aren't they talking about somebody that has a disability virtually being unable to get employment ever again in this country? Why aren't they talking about the closing of drug and alcohol programs? Why aren't they talking about my friend Eduardo from Kansas who needed a heart transplant? And because he was undocumented and couldn't prove that he could have ongoing health care, our president, our government, let a 14-year-old boy die. And why weren't they talking about in the debates about the police brutality that's happening in Milwaukee, where you could basically just shoot to kill without any trial or without any kind of investigation? And why can't they use the P word? Why can't they talk about poverty and how half of all Americans now are living in poverty? When I heard some of those debates, I just wanted to, to get up and go take a shot or something every time they said the middle class, right? It was like a contest between who could say the word middle class in Israel, every 5 seconds. It was amazing. Anyway, and they didn't talk about gay marriage. They didn't talk about domestic violence and how our battered women's shelters across this country have been full to capacity for years now. And there's a direct correlation between the rise in deaths of women across this country. And they didn't talk about the closing of schools. Philadelphia, we like to follow Detroit, right? First we inherited you guys as public housing guy, and he engaged that great guy. And, he demolished all the public housing there. And then now we're trying to follow you guys by closing 64 schools. And the proposal to privatize everything. Soon we'll have to privatize the air. We'll have to walk around and pay some corporation for a few minutes to breathe. And while I joke about it today, It's not that far away. Especially after visiting West Virginia, where the coal companies continue to rule the town, and where you see signs that are hanging around that say things like clean coal. Isn't that an oxymoron?
It's a joke.
And where both President Obama and Mitt Romney are in a contest to see who can tighten their belt the most and serve the interests of the corporations.
That's right.
You know, doesn't matter anymore if we can have clean water to drink. If our children have to fill the emergency rooms and visit the asthma sections because they can't breathe anymore. So, these are all of the things that drove us to do that thing. You know, first we tried to go to the first debate in New York City. We showed up with the chickens. Oh yes, we had chickens. I'm sure you didn't hear about it on CNN or anything like that. But it was Jill and I and the chickens. We were trying to make the message that the men needed to move over, let the women in, and let us talk about saving Mother Earth, our planet, and our sons and our children and the next generation. Well, that didn't work. Gee. So then we went to Kentucky. You know that thing, the vice presidential debate? I was so excited for that one. I mean, could you imagine Biden, Ryan, and Cheri Honkala? You know, with all of my years of welfare rights behind me. You know, I was going to make up for 25 years of being told as a poor woman in this country to go kill myself. I was going to get all that rage out that night. You know, but instead, I had to walk the streets of Kentucky with members of Occupy. We made an austerity wagon. And we put somebody that was dressed up as Obama, somebody that was dressed up as Mitt Romney, and a bunch of workers in workers' gear, a doctor in a doctor outfit, you know, a police officer, you know, different people that represented the workers and myself. And we pulled this big wagon through Kentucky with the both of them in the back of the wagon. And around the wagon, we had a really important message that was the austerity message from both candidates, which is, we know you have 2 jobs, go ahead and get a couple more. So, yes, and we brought the chicken there too. And, you know, we walked through the streets of Kentucky with the austerity wagon and the chicken, and no, we were not let into the debates. So then when the debates went back to New York City again, we went to New York City. And we, you know, brought a bunch of media with us. Oh, I'm sorry, mostly international media. And we got up to the gates on the university. And we figured, you know, we're going to ask for somebody that represents the Commission on Presidential Debates. Certainly they're going to send somebody out because the polls show that if people were to vote today, over 3.2 million people would vote for us. So certainly you can't do anything bad to people that have that big of a base, right? Oh, this is the US. So when we got there, we asked for somebody from the CPD. They didn't send us anybody. Next thing we knew, all of the big guys, the big officers surrounded us in a circle, and as soon as they surrounded us in a circle, they told us we were obstructing traffic. when we were in the middle of officers. I'm not sure how we were doing it.
Really?
And the next thing I knew, we were carted off and placed in 2 different vehicles by police officers and Secret Service. Then we were taken to a Winnebago, and Secret Service hung out with us for a little bit, took our photographs, and then put us both into a paddy wagon, drove us 10 miles away to a secret location and a secret warehouse in the middle of nowhere.
Wow.
And on a metal chair, we were both handcuffed sideways with our hands in one position. You know, now this was okay the 2nd hour, maybe even into the 4th hour. When it get to the 5th, the 6th, and then over 8 hours, we were devastated. In my 200-some arrests in this country, I've had horrible experiences in jail. But never did I believe that running for one of this country's highest offices and having the ability to have 85% of the population qualify to be able to vote for us, that we would spend 8 hours handcuffed to metal chairs with nobody knowing where we were. And so we clearly knew that in this country, democracy no longer exists. And we are in serious trouble. And we need to start talking about this. We need outside help. We need outside election observers. We need international media to cover the plight of people living in our country. And we need to begin to use whatever kind of outlets to get out the truth about what's happening in this country. So we decided as a campaign to file a lawsuit against the Commission on Presidential Debates. So as the young man said earlier, we are busy painting as many towns as possible green.
That's right.
You know, and my older son always told me, you know, Mom, don't ever believe anything good they tell you about in the papers, so you can keep your ego in check. But don't ever believe anything bad they say as well. And there was an article that came out in one of the newspapers in Philadelphia which said, is Cheri Honkala going to be single-handedly responsible for destroying the Democratic Party in Pennsylvania? I didn't know I was that powerful.
Give it your best shot, Cheri.
There we go.
It might be in that.
You know, and after this campaign, I might as well just get the tattoo. Spoiler. You know? But I've learned from some very courageous women that are in this room and other parts of this country that you can't do this thing if you're interested in being popular.
That's right.
And there's a beginning and there's a start. And it's always hard for all of us here to be the ones out front. But we know that this snowball is going down the hill right now.
That's right.
And it's gaining momentum, and it can never go back to the way it was before. For the first time in history, Amy Goodman held the expanded debates.
Right.
That means that each expanded debate, over 25 million people got exposed to other candidates in this country. So do you think in 4 years from now, the progressive movement is gonna say like, oh, that's right, we only have 2 parties? No.
No.
Hopefully we're going to be organized to demand that never again in this country, if we do our homework, we get the numbers, and where it's mathematically possible for people to win the White House, damn it, the American people should decide who should be in the White House.
That's right.
So, we've been running around the country with something that's called the Green New Deal. Yeah, and some people asked me about that thing, and they said, well, isn't the Green New Deal kind of red? And I said, absolutely. Yeah, the Green New Deal is about what's possible in one of the richest places in the entire world. And that's one of the things that running for vice president has allowed us to do, is talk about what's possible. We intend to take the unemployment offices and turn them into employment offices. We're gonna green the economy, and you know the folks that are killing each other and bringing, you know, our military's coming home dead. We're going to turn our military into organic farmers. We're going to forgive student debt.
Yeah.
For some reason, every college campus we spoke on across this country, nobody's disagreed with us. I guess young people are tired of spending their lives after they graduate from college like indentured servants.
Right.
They want a future for themselves and for their children. But we're also going to break up those big banks.
Yeah.
And we're going to tax the rich. So we don't have to participate in that box anymore. We don't have to talk about how we're going to balance the budget. There's enough to go around for everybody, they just don't need us.
That's right.
So we're getting organized. We're going from neighborhood to neighborhood. I'm proud to say in Pennsylvania right now, the Greens are the fastest growing political party in the state of Pennsylvania. You see, it's real easy, and it doesn't happen online. It goes back to that thing that maybe some of you more seasoned organizers know about here in this room. We didn't organize it online. We went door to door. We went into people's living rooms. We showed them a paper that says, this is what it means if you vote for the Democrats. This is what it means if you vote for the Republicans. And this is what the future will look like if you help us build the Green Party. And so together, we intend to stop arguing about who's got the best seat on the Titanic or the worst seat. We're gonna build this raft, we're gonna get the hell off, and we're gonna build a new tomorrow for all of us. So we've only got a few days left of this campaign. I'm going to be weathering the storm, literally, on the East Coast. Jill's going to be in Texas, and we intend to go by way of Ohio. Oh, how dare us. And we are here to say that we are absolutely thrilled that this campaign actually begins the day after the election. We need you to declare Election Day in Michigan a national holiday. Yeah. We need you to take the day off, take your kids with them, write them an excuse, do like, and we need you to work the polls. Yeah. And we need you to have them dare call you a spoiler. Because that day is also an educational day. Because you're going to talk about Eduardo. You're going to think about all those brothers and sisters that are sitting in prison right now. And you're going to think about this next generation. And we're going to begin to build this thing. And then, in a few weeks from now, we're going to announce running tons of people across this entire country on the Green Party. And we're going to support the folks locally here that are already running. And in 4 years from now, if we're able to get even 5%, it means 4 years from now, we'll start the next presidential campaign in this country with $20 million. Now, let me tell you, we do everything on $1.87. Can you imagine what we could do with $20 million? You look out. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Woo! Woo, woo, woo.
Thank you, but that's too much pressure. All of us, all of us. Okay.
All of us.
All of us, all of us, all of us, all of us.
All right.
Okay, so, I hope you don't feel any pressure, but, you guys better help pull your numbers here, because we need that $20 million.
That's right.
Because a whole rack of you are running for office in about a minute, so we need that. All right, thank you.
Thank you.